strands on a fascinating roller coaster of endless learning, experimentation, and discovery of technology, where the destination is not the end and the journey is the most fun. This is the Helical Brew. With your hosts, Mike, Sura, Jeff, and Elizabeth.
Happy Friday from episode 7 of the Helical Brew podcast. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to the team. We are gathering here today. We're going to have a relatively, I think, brief discussion. We'll see. Could always go longer. Sura's going to leave a little bit early, but we will continue as the conversation continues. But we're going to talk about something that I think we've seen both sides of for sure in our past, whether it's industrial automation, general industry, or life science. This concept of aesthetics that we see in industrial design when it comes to equipment being used in a relatively closed space and environment. I mean, the aesthetics are primarily brand oriented, which I of course get. If you work in a company or a business that's defined by its brand, I mean, of course you want to have something that's identifiable, but sometimes maybe it gets in the way of function. Yeah, we'll throw out a few examples and have that conversation of where maybe sometimes the form takes over for the function, or vice versa. Maybe the opposite's possible too. But anyway, before we get into that, let's check in. Let's start with you, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm still tired, but that's okay. This week, actually tomorrow, that's why we kind of pushed the date up a little bit for this, coaching again for the tournament. So all volleyball teams are 0-0, so the regular season didn't mean anything. So 11 a.m. tomorrow, I'm in the gym with the girls. I'm gonna see how we can do, So hopefully they've had enough coffee at that point. It's like, come on, girls, you got to wake up.
They've had enough coffee.
Yeah, trust me.
I remember the first cup of coffee I had. It was post high school, that's for sure. I didn't drink coffee. I always kind of going, oh, that coffee, and then all of a sudden I discovered, oh, coffee and sugar, that's pretty good.
I had somebody we worked with who works in the life science space, but there's a restaurant in Zionsville, Indiana, called the Friendly Tavern, and they have the best pork tenderloin. Well, this young man happens to be Jewish, and he said he had never been introduced to it before, and then he had it, not with me first time, but when he first had it, he's like, oh, dear tenderloin, where have you been all my life?
How interesting.
I know, he loved it, and they're great sandwiches, so suffice to say, he probably doesn't follow the tradition, so...
It's sometimes it's nice to experience the novelty to someone else, right? It might be just routine for us or something, but you're like, oh,
right.
Wow, this is like it discovers something. Hey, first time I took a colleague of mine, he was actually the business unit manager for a company I worked with, French, and took him to In-N-Out Burger. I remember my boss was like, are we really going to a burger place with the boss? Like, and then he goes, can we go again the following day? So it's like, see?
Just new experiences.
Yeah. Well, I will also be at a high school gymnasium, but this one's going to be filled up with a bunch of kids doing robot competitions. So so you and I are both tied up this weekend doing volunteer activities. Yeah, I got roped into to be a MC at a robot competition for first, but this is gonna be the Lego stuff, so it's a little bit different from the one I did last time.
Oh yeah,
that'll be fun. But yeah, it's a little bit more. It's faster turnaround, a lot more teams, right? As opposed to the bigger the robot, the fewer the teams is generally the
longer the day.
The pattern.
This is in Reno, Mike?
This is in Reno. Yeah, this is at one of the schools in Reno, and there's different divisions of first, so each area has its own like lead. So NorCal is the one I worked with in the past. I mentored a team with a buddy of mine there, and then got into the whole volunteer effort, and that's what I've done ever since. And then I got, word got out in Nevada because you kind of have to know the cadence of these matches and the style of the first program. So once you kind of have that in hand, you can support it anywhere. But we're always recruiting people to support in different areas. And San Diego's got a huge contingent of first. I mean, it's probably not quite the size of the Bay Area, but substantial compared to what we have in Nevada. I think in first tech challenges, maybe, I don't know, 23 teams, whereas in the Bay Area it's hundreds, but it's still fun. So, and heading over to you, Sura, how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah. Good. Any, so you're going to cut out a little bit early, so we'll drop into the topic shortly after checking in with Elizabeth.
Yes, hi.
How goes it?
Well, everything's good here.
Yeah.
Nice weather. Somehow it's like the warmest November so far I've been here. So we're enjoying that with my brother that he's visiting.
Oh, okay.
So
how long
yeah,
he staying?
it's been until the next week, next Wednesday. So he still has some days here with us.
Nice long trip.
Which is great.
Good.
Yeah, but I was just in a call, like I'm also like working with the LRAG team here to start to organize the socials for this month. So kind of getting the sponsorships and setting up the event dates, and we need to start promoting as well. So yeah, really looking forward to that because we are planning the 2 events, one in Toronto, one in Montreal. And so we're trying to get some sponsors and start inviting people.
Yeah, cool.
So I was just working on that before I joined the call.
Yeah, I feel like the local meetup events are getting more and more momentum around the industry.
Yes.
It's getting more popular, whether they're formalized kind of from a large organization or just small groups trying to build up their own.
Yeah, we had a nice event in Vancouver last month. So we got some engagement there, and our next meeting is going to be in Vancouver. So we want to have people being aware of that event coming up.
You want to say it's not just about Eastern Canada, right?
Yes, we need to go all wide to the other side of the country.
Good. Okay. Well, we will drop right into the topic. So, yeah, what we're going to, I think we all have some notes to compare experiences on. I mean, I certainly do, being in the robot world. And we had, you look at some just robots themselves, and it's like this one clearly had this amount of industrial design, and then you look at another one that had this amount of industrial design. I think that was one thing I will give a shout out to, my first employer, Stoidley. That was, people would walk away and say, that is one darn good looking robot, right? You say it's completely enclosed, it's got a nice paint job, you could get it with a smooth clean room finish. That was like mint. It cost $8,000 extra, but I remember I have a part of one of those in my garage still, and I look at it and I'm like, wow, that was a great paint job. Ferrari paint job on a Ferrari robot. But then you go look at other robots, and it's like you can see the sand casting remnants, and you put your hand on it, it's just this texture thing. I think it goes across. When I got into life science, I remember seeing some instruments are just pure function-driven designs, and then you go to other ones like the diagnostics industry. You go to like AACC or now ADLM, you walk through that show, you start seeing these great industrial designs for blood diagnostic equipment or various diagnostic devices, and I just found that so fascinating because in the research space, maybe it's a little more function over form, if you will. So yeah, I mean, so what kicked this whole discussion off was Sura, you had mentioned you were looking into work cell design, things like that, and I thought we would start with maybe some experiences where functionality might have been slightly inhibited by form.
Yeah, it's interesting, as we talk about upcoming conferences and things that we're preparing to showcase, you always think about what you're putting together that might be aesthetically pleasing to draw people in, but also from my perspective, being like highly technical to understand like, is this going to do the job that it needs to do? And granted, we're doing like a demo, so it doesn't actually need to do like a full biological workflow. But you kind of get into the space of where does this panel go and how do we open it or close it and where do we put the robotic arm and how do we mount it? And it all kind of can be functional or can be aesthetic, or you can put those two things together. And it got me thinking that it's not just the work cells, right? It's also these hardware components that different companies try to do back when acoustic dispensing was kind of just a huge novelty and there were only maybe two players, and one was a completely open system that you had to calibrate and spend lots of time calibrating because of the caveats and quirks of the software, and one was a completely enclosed system that like you didn't even know how it ran because it was just this shell that was beautiful on top and you just got presented a nest and that's all you can see. So it's like the Apple and the PC, right? Can you brick it versus do you just use it out of the box? So that's kind of what started this discussion.
Yep. Yeah. And in all fairness to the devices, a lot of these instruments come out of very technical research and development programs, right? I mean, you're talking about. I remember just to get an example. I remember like hearing about LabSite like a long time ago, before an instrument ever even went out the door. That instrument was, or that whole concept was under R&D for a very long time, with I'm sure a pretty healthy investment. And to be able to do that, and of course the technology's changed over time. The way they're able to detect what the drop size is and the acoustic head and what's driving the head and all that stuff. But it's but that's how things get started. I mean, it truly, like, that whole concept revolutionized the industry in so many ways in terms of low volume dispensing, and still today.
And they were serious about it, right? Like they had
right.
sound engineers, and for what they were trying to achieve, it absolutely makes sense that you have to have you have to know your environment. You have to enclose it in a way that you can kind of predict what's going to happen, because you're using sound and fluctuations like that are important to fine tune. It's just the novelty of two different companies trying to do the same thing and just kind of putting it across differently. So aesthetically it's different, and then behind it, what can it do, right? And how robust is it? That's what I'm more interested in.
Yep. Jeff, how about you?
Well, in my experiences, when we talk about, I'll give you two examples. The first one is one that I worked at, and we can all remember back in the day, Velocity 11. That's a throwback from the past for sure, which is now Agilent Technologies. But the thing with those guys was when you saw a white instrument in the lab, you automatically assumed, or if it was, you knew that it was a Velocity 11 product because of the white casings they put in it. And they were really good instruments, and some of them are still on the market today.
Oh, yeah.
They still sell them, and they do sell them in third party. So the fact is they had a look about them. You go to the aesthetics part of it, you knew what that was, and you kind of pointed to that and say, oh, I know who made that type of thing. So they really went with that vibe, but they also made them so robust that people really wanted them. And one thing that I would always try to do in my designs from a tabletop perspective, again, you talk about space limitations I may have and the way people design their instrumentation. They're not necessarily, if at all, industrial designers, engineers. So they're just building a box to do a specific thing. Size be damned, whatever. So you're trying to fit this all in this particular space. So I would always do a Thor Lab tabletop. Now, that is not the cheapest piece of metal that you can get. So you've got these M6 optical tabletops, but I could move instruments wherever I wanted to, knowing full well that when Precise came onto the market, I didn't have to have it tangentially against the robot arm in previous designs coming out of the V11 house. I could move them in any way I wanted to. So now my nest doesn't have to be aligned tangential with the robot end effector. So it really makes it flexible, and I can jam things together a little bit closer and maximize the amount of space I have available to me on deck. So that's really helpful.
But Thor's an example of, you thinking, for example, when I was building work cells, I see all these people like tapping into polyphenol tops, right? And you've got all these truss bows with holes everywhere. And for me, discovering like, hey, I could put a breadboard on there and it makes it more flexible, double density, even more flexible. That's just, it elevates kind of your build, and it allows you to have that forward thinking notion of like, these pieces don't have to live here forever, right? And now you've got other companies, Automata, with, moving lab benches and the different nests that can kind of end up where they need to be without actually having to utilize much more than the bench space that you have. These things are just innovations that build on top of each other. And it's also aesthetically pleasing. Now I don't have a truss top with a bunch of holes, and those things are probably not good to breathe in anyway, right? So you have this cost factor, but it also has a function. It's aesthetically more pleasing, right? And it fits what you're trying to accomplish. So I think, to your point, you have to make sure that if you're going in that direction, there's a function behind it. And it's not like I'm going to add another $500 per breadboard piece if I'm building that way just so it looks nice. So it's that metal just gives that nice effect, That's not what you should go for necessarily.
Yeah, and even someone brought it up to my attention, and I hadn't thought about it before. And this happens. Your robot crashes with a piece of labware in it with some nice liquid coming out of that nice acoustic dispensing system. Well, what's that going to happen? It's going to go straight down into whatever's underneath that deck. Mm-hmm. So I said, good point. So I bought some film that you could lay over the top, so all the holes are covered. If you needed a hole, carve it out, and now you can just go right into it. So you solve the problems.
There's even plastic pegs, right, that you can put back in the hole too.
Are there? I didn't notice. I mean, we never put them back in there. We just left the hole open, so it didn't matter. But yeah, you could definitely do those extra things. So you're right. It's taking it to a different level altogether.
Elizabeth, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, well, it's also like in our space, it's the consideration of having the users interacting with the system so closely. So that's why when we are designing, we have to take that into consideration. It's not like we are building a system that will be independent and will run, constantly. It's interacting with the user, and that's why we are like trying to ask all the questions at the beginning so we can start designing a system that will work for them. And the team has become like even more efficient on asking the right questions to the user, so to understand, is there a need for them to interact with the system? What pieces and what access points do we need in the system for them to be able to use it as well with the robotics? And safety is another consideration. And now with since we started and to now, like I would say 19 years that I have been in the business, I've seen like the system shrinking so much because of the design of the robot that it's allowing us to use less footprint, be more acknowledging that the user is going to interact with the system. So the safety part is key. And then the other thing is that we are able to build up as well in vertical space, not just, the horizontal space. So there's a lot of tools right now that we have to really be creative with the designs. And the other question is, like, what do you plan to do in the future? Like we just talked about, like, do you want to add more devices to the system? Like you said, Sura, and it's not going to be the same solution forever. It's going to change.
But that's the cool thing about the way, like where we are now, is that the technology has progressed. Before it was just like laying everything out and then you took up this big piece of the lab. Now we're talking like we can go up because we have precise arms with, high reach and can extend farther than we're used to. We also have like rails and mobile robots now. So things just become available to the imagination in terms of how you're going to build something and how you're going to fit it into an academic lab versus like a bigger research facility versus, pilot plant, whatever you're thinking of. It's interesting because it affords more more options, but I think at the core of it, you have to have more ability to innovate in that space. Can you think outside the box? Like, it's a little bit of geometry mixed in with like fantasy that becomes reality.
And then you have the construction engineers or the facilities folks saying, oh no, that can't go on the second floor. What do you mean can't go on the second floor?
Well, I built high once, and the facility guy was like, "Oh, you didn't tell me you were going there. You can't go that close to the sprinklers." I was like, dude, I should have asked that question beforehand.
You're just like, God!
Because we had to fit it in this like narrow space. I'm like, oh yeah, there's sprinklers.
Yeah. So often
many considerations.
You're building something to maximize space in a space that was never meant to be maximized. And you're like, we're not.
A puzzle and a riddle and an enigma.
That's right. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Will my system fit in that? Yeah.
But even if you step away from that, there's considerations like Elizabeth was saying on the end user side, right? Like I remember getting something from a vendor that they were so proud of this like touch screen because it got away from like the keyboard and the mouse, and I always try to build things that have like no wires, right?
Yeah.
But the touchscreen was also problematic because the sensitivity was dialed way up, and it was just going beyond what the user needed. So even in that end, like you have to think like this is aesthetically pleasing, but is it functional? You know?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
What are we looking at here?
This is where I got started in lab automation. This was my first. These were built in off of Mira Mesa, Hunikins and Mira Mesa, in GNF Systems when it existed. It doesn't really exist anymore, but these were. But this was like talk about space. I mean, and these were put in low ceiling environments, which is kind of funny. And I'm not sure why is the screen filling up for you on your end?
It's not. It's tiny.
It's like a tiny.
I couldn't tell what kind of arm it was.
Anyway, yeah. So I'll just stop that. But the robot, the amount of like elbow room you needed around the robot was, you could fit an entire modern compact robot work cell in that empty space before you even got to the actual usable space, because you'd have, the robot would need to articulate. You're carrying a gripper with a, have you ever heard of a quick stop, right? The quick stop, which is this air driven, basically a e-stop trigger. So the robot collided with something. Sometimes it wasn't enough. Like if the robot was really moving and it crashed, it would tear the whole assembly off. But and that was a $50,000 mistake. But yeah, I mean, these were the early like hardcore, high throughput, large systems, and they looked like something out of a car factory. Something building windshield wiper nozzles or Gillette blades. Because a lot of Staubleys are used to do Gillette blades at that factory, and it's just But now, like you were saying, Elizabeth, you can fit. I mean, you can still push the limits. You can certainly hit the ceiling with some of the tall robots, right? You get a robot that's almost 1.5 meters Z-stroke, and then you've got all the assembly on top of that. You can easily, if you're in a low ceiling situation, it's not going to work so well. Or if you've got the overhead facilities, I've run into that too, where you've got a facility that is plumbed properly for laboratory use, and it's going to have all your gases and liquids and waste transport all there on the overhead rail. That can get in your way too. But you mentioned it's too bad the screen isn't filling up because I've got the whole browser window open now. It's live and learn with Riverside.fm. What are you going to do? Because it filled up the screen when you did it, Jeff. And,
it did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give it one.
That's
maybe
cool.
If I share the whole, it's on an external screen. Maybe if I share the whole screen, let's give it a try. See what happens.
Yeah, if you're doing a picture or just like an application, it's probably
Screen
just
2. Here we go. We're going to do screen 2.
Let's do it. That's better.
Oh,
there we go, baby.
Right on the Bravo.
Pays not to give up. You know what I'm saying? Now,
Bravo. There we go.
See that
Okay, now I can see it.
big old.
Now, if you just click on, can you get to that picture exclusively instead of everything else?
It takes you to the website.
Does it?
It's all. I can get closer. You can see that gripper. There's that.
Okay.
There's that fancy RoboHand parallel pneumatic with the skirt. got the it only grabs the plate at the very edge, right? You see the robots right there. It only grabs at the very edge, and that skirt, those fingers actually were the key to this thing working, really, because it was so reliable, gripping the skirt like that, completely capturing it on the end. And then it would use these aligner stations. These are aligner stations, so you can put a lid on it. That's what this one is on the right. And yeah, so that was. But I mean, there were small.
Did you machine those fingers yourself, or like was it just part of the build?
GNF did. Yeah, GNF built the. I mean, GNF is a part of Novartis, right? So they.
Yeah. I just know I've customized fingers for so many robot arms.
Yeah, no, they did. This entire, everything you see in this, like here, even the pin tool, there's a washer in the back here, the lids, all that stuff is internal design by Novartis.
Nice.
So yeah, they did all that stuff internally. But yeah, switching gears, to the. I mean, what a legend! I mean, I before, like in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, I remember seeing these things get deployed. And it looks like Sura's recording has stopped. Okay, that's what it says.
You don't see me?
No, I just got a message that says your recording stopped.
Oh, weird.
Oh.
There's a delay on your end, but
recording.
I can't get rid of the message. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, Riverside.
Blame Rogers.
Yeah, blame Rogers.
But see,
San
the
Diego.
Bravo,
Always.
now that you have the Bravo up, the Bravo is an example of something that has functional form, and it's still like minimalistic and aesthetically pleasing. Everything is on the deck. The pipetting is right there.
Look how open that thing is. It's like
completely open. You can integrate it. You can throw it in a fume hood. Like, lovely.
Mm-hmm.
All these
and
accessories.
Those types of setups were fantastic to work on, and they're really tight, compact. Those were a joy to work on. And I will say, when they came out with the R series bench cell, that was a godsend to the field service team. With the X series, it was a nightmare. I'm just telling you guys the truth. It was awful because every single arm, and there were 4 arms, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and they were all independent. So when they rotated, they're all independent. So if one got off, it was a nightmare. And when they switched to this combined design, they both rotate at the same time, and it was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And even their little robot that went from the stacker to the Bravo was just so well designed. Like functional, minimal intervention. I never had to deal with servicing it or messing with it at all.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to, for that bench cell, you could take that robot, the traveling robot, pull that off, put a new one on, send the old one back, get that all fixed back up. And it was just, plug and play, swap out, hot swap, if you will.
But even the V-Spin, it had its own little robot, right? That's
the Access 2. Yep.
It's things like that you think about, right? Then you deploy the product, and it makes it so easy for the end user. That's what I like, right? We have to think about that when we're looking at how we're building things and how we're deploying them.
What a contrast to another acquisition. The biotech instruments look nothing like those V11 instruments, Totally
and that
different.
was an acquisition, yeah.
That was an acquisition. That was definitely an acquisition. But that was, and it takes time, right? I mean, you can't this instrument. You can't just change the industrial design, and I'm sure it's fine, right? If they've proven it, then great.
I don't know, man. They could have done better with the Neo. Like, why does it look like that? It's so hard to integrate with its odd little eggshell, not quite eggshell shape. It's just so.
Oh, this one?
Bulbous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? So it has something to do with the way the filters are inside. I don't know. They could have done better, man.
This thing here, yeah. Oh, yeah, right. And they've got their own little robot.
Biospa, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it'll work if you buy everything from them. You try to integrate it on your own. It's just takes up so much real estate.
This one's definitely on rails. Yeah, it's got this sort of thermo-ish, thing.
I haven't seen
I like that
any
verb,
of
Mike.
that
Thermoish.
in thermoish. Here forever as an adjective. You're so thermoish. But I've never seen a biospa actually implemented, at least at my time,
me neither.
with V11 and Agilent.
No.
I never had one, so.
Biospa, okay.
But that's the thing, if you're doing it internal, even if you're working like with a vendor like us, right, we're going to think about the best way to get you the best equipment to build the work cell for your end result, right? And I think a lot of it comes down to how do these pieces play well together. And if you've got something like, you know, the Neo that takes up a lot of real estate and everything else is like minimalistic and sleek and modular, it really, you know, stands out when you deliver the product.
Yeah.
Well, there's one product, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it shall remain nameless. But it had, we talked about this previously, but it has a little tab on the nest position. Elizabeth, this company's in Boston, which doesn't narrow it down, I know, but begins with a T. Rhymes with cicada. But it's not their fault.
You're giving it away, Jeff. You're giving it away.
But anyway, let's be clever, right? But you try to set it down, and there's this little tiny tab in the back, which I know is probably, it's critical for the instrument, but when it comes to setting a robot with a plate in there, you have to, you have to do gymnastics with the robot to get it in there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this next topic around the EDC, acoustic liquid dispensing.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't exist
what a
anymore.
contrast. I figured I'd bring them both up so you can just sort of
Yeah.
compare and contrast here. It's two very different things. Similar function, but yeah. You can do it
When
like
you
this,
meant
or you can do
open,
it like
Sura,
that.
you weren't joking. You were like,
hadn't
it's
seen
completely
that?
open.
It's
No.
completely open. It's perfect
No.
for integrations, right? But
Yeah.
you definitely need an engineering team on hand because calibrating liquids takes a long time. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Whereas
Yeah.
Echo provides all these calibrations within their system, but you saw
Yeah.
it. It's like it's like your computer tower. You got to take the tower off just to see what's behind the Echo. Here, everything is just accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hadn't seen the EDC before, so.
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it probably got acquired before you had a chance to play with it.
Yeah. These are collector's items now.
Yeah. Perfect.
Oh, you
Yeah,
can
we
even
had
see
one on
those like
BASF.
all the sensors and the cabling, the coax, right? I mean, it's all there for you.
Wow.
It looks
It's
like
like
it
I
came
built
off
it in
of-
my garage. You know?
Sure. It remind I worked in the RF department at my university, and we worked with coax and N-type connectors all the time. And it's like, yeah, this is all there for you to see.
But if you're doing like non-standard liquids, right?
I have
the
heard
ability
it's
for
worth
you
the time.
to
Yeah.
exactly, the fact that you can like be an expert at this and make it happen for whatever liquid class you're looking for without having to pay all the fees that are associated with LabSite getting those liquids onto the Echo, if it's possible at all. It's worth it for some people. It was worth it for us, which is why we had one purchased, but quickly got cornered out of the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's and then you've got the Echo 525. I think I got multiple models now, right? There's
So many models.
Yeah.
And they have the tube Echo too, which is kind of cool. I remember that one.
But this is one of those vendors that everything works if you use their consumables, right? Because they're finely attenuated it using all the
That's kind of the Apple
precision that
approach
they're
a little
working with.
bit, like
Yeah.
Right. That's what it
Stay-
reminds me of, PC versus Apple.
stay in the ecosystem. Yeah, definitely a PC. I mean, the EDC's got Bill Gates written all over it. And then you got I'm a PC, and then over here I'm a Mac guy going. Hey PC,
It's even white.
I'm trying to figure
Just
out
reminds me of those
liquid
old
class.
commercials, Mac versus
Exactly.
PC, right?
Yeah. How you doing, PC? I'm just trying to get another liquid class program, and I got this weird labware, and it's not really working very well. Oh, well, that's cool. Let me help you out. Over here, we're all dialed in. Everything's working great. Just press the button and go. I mean, that
All
really.
right. Beckman really needs to hire Mike to do this commercial.
I'm a Mac. You're not.
Oh, that's a lovely note to go out on. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll see you at the next podcast.
All right.
All right. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye, Sura.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
I was accused by a boss once at Corteva, and it was a custom design. We had to go to an outside vendor because I was trying to do some 1536 well plate drying, and I wanted to use individual shells. So when it went in, sensor was triggered, shell came down, air was drying out the plates.
Yeah.
And he accused me, and I was like, I didn't realize it was going to go that way, of creating a Bauhausian design. And I was like, what? What do you mean? So I had to go do some research on what Bauhaus design was. But, I took it as a compliment. So, but it worked. So completely crushed whatever time constraints we were trying to hit, and we destroyed it. So got recognized for it. But it was a big system. They had to run some crazy, like 480 volt or something into that lab. And I'm like, ooh, that's not what I anticipated. They had a transformer and everything because I was drawing so much power. But
Yeah, and that's another thing that you need to consider as well. Like, the facilities can support what the system is going to require.
right.
So the team has to put thought on that as well.
Yeah, I ran some tests in a vacuum, just like a tabletop vacuum with some heat. And I was just thinking, okay, if I can reduce the pressure, I can reduce the heat, time, all that kind of stuff. It's like drying plates in Colorado. Well, that didn't work out because all of it started to bubble up over the plates, and now I got cross-contamination. Okay, never mind, forget that. But these are the things we do as engineers, too. It's not just scientists.
Yeah, do what you got to do.
If you're going to test some things, you got to try. So,
Yeah, the other thing is that, lots of devices, you have to account for how do you service those devices too. So you cannot block the sites of, or the wherever it is that the service team has to be able to reach to service the devices. And as a user, you should at least know the basics of what do I need to do to guarantee that when they come to do servicing on the equipment, it's available, they can reach without having to disassemble the entire system. So I was surprised that a lot of teams, they don't consider those things, those factors when they are designing. So then you have a problem when the service team comes over.
it's like the mechanic and the engineer in the automotive sector. Mechanics hate the engineers because they put the oil filter up this way and that way. So.
Yeah. Well, and how many times, a lot of the devices are perfectly fine to work on when they're on an open table, but then you put it into a system and there's no direction on maybe where to put an access port or which side of the instrument needs to be exposed to the outside so you can easily get into it, and you end up, having to crowbar this thing out of there just to work on it. That's some of these instruments don't like to be moved. I mean, that's just they really don't like to be moved.
Or you crowbar yourself into the system. I mean, Elizabeth was small, but I'm not. Mike, you're definitely not small. And for me to climb into a work cell, that was a real challenge at times.
I was at the customer side, and they were showing me other systems that they had over there. And it was one system that they built on a enclosure, and the platform was quite high. And the user had to climb and go inside the enclosure to be able to service things. And I was thinking, why will they build it that way? Because she was tall, and I said, well, maybe you call me when you need help. But the thing is that she had to physically climb on that platform and go and service the devices that were inside that enclosure. And I thought the design was made no sense to me at all. Because she always had to be on top of the thing, trying to fix the equipment. So it wasn't our system; it was a different vendor. But I was surprised that they didn't put too much thought about how the user has to interact with it as well.
I mean, those aspects. When you only make something once, that's the worst case. Or if you make it 5 times or 10 times, that information often there's not an opportunity for it to be collected. You can think about it proactively, but I think a lot of things, requires iteration. You've seen it with some of the bigger integrators, right? I mean, they've gotten, more standardized. They've gotten better at deploying, a common platform, at least, because, we don't have a lot of commonality in this industry, right? When you're building systems, because everybody wants something different. But at least if you base it like you're doing, and I know the Retisoft frames, and you see it with the other vendors too, they've got standardized frames that you can use to like building blocks. I mean, that's a huge starting point when you're not having to worry about the electrical and the fluids and you've got kind of a standard way to deal with that from one system to the next. You kind of know what to expect. And I remember there was a great video that I'll give them a shout out. The Hi-Res did with AstraZeneca years ago, and I think it was Paul from AZ that was working. His video shows him crawling into a biocell. he's like literally, diving in to a biocell to get around the DDR robot and to get into like trying to access something. And that is, as cool as those things looked, that was one thing that was not attractive for sure, is that the biocells required everything was from the outside in, and with a 2 meter by 2 meter bench, that's a long way to get in. And plus you had to get around to the front of the instrument. So sometimes you'd have to pull something out. And I thought that was just a great illustration of, those things did have challenges when it came to accessing things from the outside, but looked amazing though. I remember when you have like 10 of them lined up, it was like, wow, got your own little biofactory there.
Yeah, who was it? I think it was Monsanto.
Oh, Monsanto, yeah, they had tons of those.
They had tons of those things. Yeah, I've been at that site many times in my past life.
Yeah,
and they just lined them up like you said. So pretty cool to see.
No, I mean, a very cool design. I mean, you can't make them, can't cover all the bases, but that was, the accessibility. And then I saw later on in the Netherlands, somebody had a similar concept, but they created sort of these pivots you could, open a door and swivel things out so you could access the other side of the instrument. Sort of, again, it was an iteration of that design, which I don't think they worked on much past when it was acquired from Agilent. But good times, fun times with instruments. Well, we're coming up on an hour. Well, not quite an hour, but we can pivot into picks of the week. If anyone has a pick of the week.
We need like a graphic pick of the week. Somebody.
Oh wait.
Or pick of the week type of thing.
No, I don't have a pick of the week this time.
No pick of the week?
No pick of the week. But
Jeff?
How about you, Mike?
I might have a pick of the week. I don't know. It depends.
Oh,
it
okay.
depends.
It sounds like it's diverting. It's kicking and punting to me to carry the team. Okay, fair enough. So my pick of the week is, Elizabeth knows this, Mike. You're going to find out, or unless you don't already know, I really like teaching people so they understand exactly what they're dealing with, right? So, and that translates to the kids as well. Since I taught robotics, you know what that's like, mentoring kids on a robotics team, just to get them thinking, right? Get their curiosity churned. Well, you're familiar with Make magazine, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Make came out with this series, a 3-volume set of things, right?
That's cool.
So they cover the early makers, the industrial rev, and then modern. So what these are in here is, if you go all the way back to the first volume, you could actually make what that object was from that time period. So they give you instructions and that kind of stuff on how to do it and what it does. So they give you a little bit of history on the industrial side. There's a bunch of different things in here. Let's see. Generate static electricity stored in a Leyden jar like Benjamin Franklin. Assemble a vacuum pump using the Venturi effect. You actually build these things with the kids. And I thought, how cool would it be to just have like a after school class and go through some of these things with the kids and say, hey, you the text on your phones or your watches or whatever was not the very first texting. And then teach them how to build a Morse code machine, telegraph. You go down the hallway and we'll run a wire around with some electrical pulse and we'll just tap it out in Morse code, teach them Morse code and say, you are sending text messages. This was invented a long time ago, kids. You got to realize you're not the first ones.
True. True. Gosh, it makes me think of text messaging on an early 2000s device.
Like a BlackBerry?
Yeah, well, no, not even a BlackBerry, but a 10 key pad with star and hash, right? And then you have the 1 2 3 1 2 1 1 1 2 2 3 1 1 1 3 3 and there were competitions. There maybe still are like Rubik's Cube competitions for people that will tap out a text message with a 9 pad or a standard 130 pad. And they can almost keep up with the amateur on the on the
regular text messaging.
And I got a question for you. So thinking about that, and I mean that's super cool. Make Magazine. Have you been to a maker fair? Have you been to one of those?
Okay.
No. Yeah, because one of the big ones is in the Bay Area. They have it in San Carlos, I think. I think now they're doing it up further north in the Bay Area where it used to be originally, but that's one of the main maker fairs. It's kind of like, people bringing all these crazy robots. They'll even have the BattleBots competition during that maker fair.
Oh, really?
But
okay.
Yeah. And then Make Magazine, obviously that's like a huge promotional opportunity for them. And I'm sure it's helped to keep them going, given, the magazine space is, I mean, there's still, it's not, it's like a lot of the magazines I used to read, PC Magazine, PC World, they just don't exist. It's like, oh, no, just go to PCMagazine.com, zipdavis.com. It's like, I miss the editorials, right? And picking up a Make Magazine is also one of those things. It's like, reading it online just doesn't feel right, having that, you can have it on the bench with you as you're tinkering with whatever.
As you're putting it together,
or, just reading for historical purposes, could be doing that.
My magazine never ran out of battery power.
Yeah, right. Or hurt my eyes.
Right. RF
and all that stuff. But I see that with these robot. I mean, with the robot competitions, it's like one gigantic maker fair. With a kind of a competitive element to it, which is always fun to see. And this is my first time to do a Legos one, so we'll see.
Oh yeah,
their program. Yeah, I've it's always been part of the program, but I've only done the big robots, like either FRC, the big
or FTC,
hundreds of a couple 100-pound robots, or the FTC robots, which are 18 inches by 18 inches by 18 inches as the starting position. Yeah. That's the rule.
Yeah. They're kind of more like a Vex is essentially.
Yeah.
At that level.
And that is going to be my pick of the week, is the first robotics program. So that I am going to choose as my pick of the week. And I will put it up here on the screen for people to see. Get it? I'll use this as an opportunity because that's part of the volunteer role is to promote and share and whatnot. But for those that are not familiar with the FIRST Robotics program, it is a program. It was originally started by Dean Kamen years ago, and he's, for those who don't know who Dean Kamen is, he's came up with a segue among a whole bunch of other different concepts, and he's more about the invention. He's a maker. Talk about a maker. He's definitely a maker, right? I mean, a lot of his career has been built off of that. But FIRST is 4 different programs. Actually, I guess 3 mainly. Well, there used to be Junior FLL, for FIRST Lego League, FIRST Tech Challenge, and now FIRST Robotics Competition. I think they're just doing FIRST Lego League now, so it's now down to 3 programs. But yeah, the robot sizes range. This is what I think this is what started it all, is the big robots. I mean, these things are significant.
Oh yeah.
And very fast, right? They're behind a wall here. So two teams against two teams. Well, in the case of FRC, it's 3 versus 3, 3 red, 3 blue, and yeah, they go after it, and then. But that program requires a whole high school to support. Like, you need substantial resources, and you need a shop on top of that. So it usually requires an institution of some sort, whether it's a private school or a public school, or maybe it could be part of a large company too, right? That donates out their access to one of their facilities to be able to use. But First Tech Challenge was really created to be more approachable, right? To have something that's smaller, and you could fit these robots in the back of your car.
Yeah, that's true.
And they have a rule. They have to start out 18 inches by 18 inches by 18 inches cube. So everything has to fit. Like, this has to be retracted. This part, this was one of those competitions where they had to go into a central scoring area and whatnot. And everything has to compact down into the 18-inch cubed space. So a lot easier, a lot more teams for sure. So you've got significantly more teams competing here, and significant competitions. You've got more opportunities to compete. Whereas FRC, it's kind of like there's one major regional competition, maybe two, and then you're off to the world championships. Here you can have 4, 5, 6 regional opportunities to compete and progress through. And then, of course, this will be the one I'll see for the first time, the Lego League. So again, even more compact. You can fit this in a briefcase. And so you're working off of these maps. Now, there's some cost in these maps. These are the kind of the play maps, or the game, the match maps, if you will, where the competition is played out. And the refereeing's a lot different. Might need to bring your reading glasses to do the refereeing on some of these, because it's quite small. But again,
and they don't
even more teams.
Yeah, and they don't have the teleop on this one. It's all programmed.
All programmed. Yeah.
So the kids just program the whole thing for each mission. Essentially, it depends on how they want to break it out. So they may take a specific couple of missions, go out here, do this on this particular challenge on the board itself, come back, put another part on the robot, run that second mission. So they have to think on their feet, but there's no teleoperation. It's not like a joystick or anything. So when we first got started in robotics at my kid's school, this is where we started. And it was difficult to get competitions in our second and third year. So that's why we kind of shifted a little bit. But it's more intense for sure.
Yep.
And if it doesn't work in the programming side, again, you're trying to use sensors to read stuff on the mat.
The mat, right.
And if it doesn't, it may work at your house where you built it. Yeah. As soon as you get to a gymnasium, the lighting's all different, the color's different on the board, suddenly it's not working. Oh, fantastic. Great. It was supposed to stop 10 centimeters ago, and it didn't. So
it's going to be interesting, just to kind of watch this. The whole lack of a teleop, because the teleop kind of gives you that sort of live. That's why I
it's
did
competition.
Notice we went to the world competition one time with our FTC team, or twice actually, and we went over to the FLL area. Things are very quiet.
Because you're the only one on the board. Yeah,
like everybody's like, oh yeah, it's nobody with controllers in their hands, like you said. Yeah.
No.
So that's my pick of the week. If anyone listening wants to get involved in First, it's just firstinspires.org, and that's it. Yeah, you can kind of see if you want to even start your own team. Like, that's how I got involved. As a friend of mine wanted to start a team for the high school where his kids were going, and we're like, we're robot people. Let's check it out, and
let's give it a shot.
And he went to school. He was in Woody Flowers. So Woody Flowers is the other founder of First. He was in one of Woody Flowers' classes at MIT.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So he was he was like, oh, Dr. Woody Flowers. I knew. Oh yeah, let's get involved in this. And so it was that was kind of cool. He's like, oh yeah, he was my professor. I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's firstinspires.org. Well, it's hard to believe, but it's here we are, almost the middle of November, and by the end of January it will be SLAS time. I am pumped.
Soon. Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Going to be enjoying the San Diego sun, and hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, because weather-wise, we don't know.
I haven't checked.
Last time we were in San Diego, remember, it was raining so much.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that made the Gaslamp district, not so fun.
Yeah.
We will be, I'm just putting this out here for the podcast, we will be trying our best, and we're kind of coordinating this, to do the podcast from SLAS.
Yep.
Live stream, that I'm not sure. It may be after the show because we all have responsibilities to the show for our respective companies. But afterwards, wherever we wind up, we'll decide. And then if you happen to be there, we may, hey, come on over, talk to us. How's the show? Blah, blah, blah. So, kind of a spur of the moment thing. And if you are watching this and would like to be a guest on that podcast, please let us know.
I guess we kind of need. I mean, people know people can always reach out on LinkedIn to any of us. Absolutely. We're tagged, right? You can send a message. But I guess that kind of reminds me. So we do have an email address, but we haven't published it much. There is an email address, helicalbrew@gmail.com. helicalbrew@gmail.com. That's an email address that we can be reached at. I originally just created that just to have a login so I could use Google Drive and then do, and also the YouTube channel. I had to create a Gmail account as part of the YouTube channel. But I just, you're mentioning that, Jeff, got me thinking. It's like, well, we can throw out the email address and I can put that in the post for this show as well. Would be fun. So if you happen to hear your name being called out in some intermediate area of the SLAS show, could be a hotel lobby, could be an after party area, could be
a bar,
and you see a bunch of people with some microphones around, you might be getting called into the Helical Brew.
As they used to say on the show, you so-and-so, come on down.
If the price is right. You're on the Helical Brew show. I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Wouldn't that? Yeah. I think it'd be fun. And then maybe we do something over by the couch.
Maybe.
The couch? Okay.
The white couch. The white leather
on the
couch.
red carpet.
On the red carpet.
Come over to the red carpet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
The couch that I remember. What was that? It was the COVID year of Boston where you couldn't get into the country. And so
it was just Tom.
Tom laid, and I would see Tom every once in a while. And I was just like, I was talking with Elizabeth. I'm like, I'm just going to go hang out on the couch. My feet are tired. Because all that was there was like, couch.
Yeah, it was. We made a decision for the couch because my business coach told me, how about you make some space for people to just relax and sit down and talk? You don't need to bring equipment, because it was like right after COVID and some of the people couldn't travel. So the idea was to have like a lounge where people will hang out. That was the main goal for that show. And it ended up being like Tom on his own attending the show. Yeah.
He said he was wiped out after that show.
Yes, he was. It was too much for one person.
Poor Tom.
Even though the show was not like they didn't have that many people, but still it was too much for one person.
I mean, it was a pretty quiet part of the show hall too. That back section didn't. Yeah. That year wasn't very. You didn't miss much, frankly. It was pretty.
We'll just put that asterisk in that year. Okay?
I was so upset I missed that show because I really wanted to go. I mean, I had everything planned. Like I had my hotel and my ticket, everything, but I got sick, so I couldn't travel. Yeah. And that's why Tom ended up being there on his own.
Yeah, it was I remember that was the year that, I mean, they were chasing people on the mask situation. Like
Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
the Boston people were just
Yeah.
all over it. And then I went to the ADLM show and I had to go through this whole secondary process just to get my badge. Oh, you don't have the sticker. You got to go over here and get the sticker. Then you can go get your badge. And you can go. It took me 2.5 hours to get my ADLM badge. Yeah,
Oh boy.
but
Hmm.
in hindsight, those shows were just not very successful in general. They were kind of on the edge shows. And then the year after was great. Everything was back to normal.
Yeah.
But that was one of those
Yeah.
shows where it's like, I know that if I know it was really important that SLAS have that event, and for the other ones too. But it was just, a lot of people pulled out. There were a lot of empty booths on
Yes,
that
I
floor.
remember seeing pictures of empty booths
Wow.
You were not alone. There were people that couldn't get into the country. Their equipment
yeah,
was
yeah.
there, and they shipped a lot more stuff than you did. At least you only shipped was it 10 by 30? Something like that?
It was 20 by 10.
Okay, 10 by 20. So 20
But
by
we
10.
didn't ship anything. Actually, we just had some banners, and then the couch and everything was from Freeman.
Yeah, okay.
So we didn't have to ship things. It was we went for
Wait a
the
minute, that couch
easiest
is a
setup
rental? You don't own
possible.
the couch?
No.
Don't buy your own furniture.
Actually,
Come
with
on.
that, I could have
Right.
bought so many.
Do they have a rent-to-own program or something?
You bought that
Yes.
couch 10 times.
I know.
I know. Every show, I could buy my own couch.
But you couldn't have hauled it in because someone else has to do that for you.
Exactly. So you can't even bring
Yeah.
stuff.
But that's
Yeah.
another podcast altogether.
Maybe if you rent it, do you
Shows.
have to still do drayage on something you rent? Or is that?
No.
Yeah, so maybe
You pay for the rental. So they
Right.
bring it over and they put
I
it.
think there is some
and-
benefit outside of, even though it's a high cost, if you were to bring your own, you'd own it, but then you pay the storage and drayage and stuff that's
Yes, exactly.
related to
Yeah.
incoming. Whereas if they don't have to handle it, as like Freeman can just lump it all into their one big shipment, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's not all, it's not so straightforward. But I just remember Boston people saying, this is the most expensive show we've ever done. Was like at the
Yes.
one this year.
Yes. It
Hands
was very,
down,
like,
the drayage was out of this world cost,
Yeah.
and that was purely the trade show hall, not even Freeman or anything like that. So
One thing I loved about the Boston show, I hadn't been to Boston at that point. So
okay.
was just hearing the locals, the genuine Boston guys. They were cracking me up, and they weren't even talking to me. I'm just listening to them. They're working the floor, they're laying out the lines. We're over here. Hey, Johnny, come over here. It was phenomenal. I'm just loving these guys. They're awesome. Just great
Come
guys.
over here, buddy. Buddy, right here.
Yeah.
No, it's just,
Hey, you going to the Boston game? You going to the Bruins game? It's just great. I loved it.
the state charge is $1.25. Yeah, thank you, Adam Sandler, for making the Boston accent universally known for those of us in the high
Yes.
school in the 90s. And welcome to Worcester. The state charge is $1.25. $1.25, huh? You want the money or? Yeah, that was a good one. All right. Well, I think we can wrap
One
it
last time, where can they find us?
up. Of course. How could I forgot? I mean, how could I forget something like that? Okay. The Helical Brew can be found on iTunes, Spotify, and now on YouTube. We're posting every video on YouTube. Now, keep in mind, Spotify supports video out of their app, so the video podcast, video version. iTunes does not. So the RSS feed does not pull up a video feed. You have to do that separately, and it's a little bit painful to do. So I'm just going to stick with Spotify as far as the video podcast app. And then, of course, if you just want to prefer YouTube, which I know a lot of folks do, you can always just go to @Helical Brew or youtube.com/@Helical Brew. pretty much Helical Brew will find us on all 3 platforms in a Google search. Two words, Helical Brew. And then, if you'd like to reach out, helicalbrew@gmail.com. And again, SLS will be cruising that show in our time that we have available outside of the regular show hours where we are working and not podcasting. We will be attempting to do some recordings outside of that. And if you're interested in hopping onto the show, we'd love to have you. We're going to have some sort of a podcasting setup at a table, and just very simple with one camera and a group thing similar to what I've seen done at shows like Automate and Pack Expo, where they have kind of a pavilion. But we won't be part of the we're not part of the official show, not yet. Maybe just hint.
We're in the Rebellion tent down the street.
We'll be over in the SLS booth. No, we won't. That's not our space. But we'll be hanging around and look forward to catching up with folks then. But in the meantime, we're going to have more episodes. And until next time, we'll see you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Helical Brew. We're glad to have you with us. For more episodes, please visit our website at helicalbrew.com. That's helicalbrew.com.